Hey everyone, welcome to Amanda's Book Corner. I'm Amanda, and this is my review of In the Shadow of a Queen by Heather B. Moore. I want to give a special thanks to Laurel Ann Nattress and Austenprose, Shadow Mountain Publishing, and Heather B. Moore for the art of this book. It was lovely, and I'm really happy that I got to be part of this book tour. In the Shadow of a Queen just came out earlier this week on October 4th, and it's about Queen Victoria's defiant daughter, Louise. The novel spans about 10 years of Louise's life. It begins the year that her father, Prince Albert, dies, and it follows as she grows up, comes of age, and starts to butt heads with her mom in certain ways. Louise is a very different person from Queen Victoria, and while her mother is more conservative in certain ways, Louise is really pushing the boundaries, and this is in the 1800s, the 1860s and 1870s, and she's really pushing into what her mother expects of her, not only as her mother, but as the Queen of England. It follows as Louise gets into art and wants to go to a public school, as she gets into politics and has very strong opinions about women's rights in particular, and as she goes through a very unconventional process to finding a husband. This book is really about a mother-daughter relationship, but unlike most mother-daughter relationships, it's about a queen and a princess, and it's about fighting to be who you are in spite of what's expected of you by the monarchy, by your family, and by society overall. So prior to getting into this novel, I didn't really know anything about Louise. I hadn't really learned about her at all. And of course, while I was aware of Queen Victoria, I've never really delved into the British monarchy, whether past or present. And so I didn't really know anything about this daughter, but I found her so interesting. And as I started reading this book, I thought she was such a fascinating character and a fascinating historical figure. When the novel begins, Louise is 12 going on 13. And what I really liked right away was getting to know the family dynamics of Louise and her siblings and her parents. Louise is very close to her siblings, and in particular with her eldest brother Bertie and with her youngest brother Leo. I really liked getting to know their relationships and seeing how they really love each other, but they don't always agree on things, and they sometimes butt heads about things. But ultimately, I feel like the siblings are really looking out for each other and have each other's backs. I also like getting to know Louise's relationship with her parents. Early on, it seems like she's very close with her father in particular. They have a very close relationship, and she really cares about him. And that's why it's so sad and so heartbreaking, as you see in that first year of the novel. You see how her father's health is getting worse and worse, and he eventually does die. Even though it happened so soon in the novel, I had already developed a really strong connection with the characters, and so I felt his loss completely, and it actually brought tears to my eyes, honestly. As someone who has also lost her own father, this was a book that was very impactful in that way, and seeing the characters mourn the loss of this loved one is so powerful and so well written. You really feel for them, and you really understand their mourning. Of course, Queen Victoria does take the mourning farther than most of them are really expecting, and it does cast a shadow over the rest of the family. It feels like they can't really move on from this, and of course you never really completely move on from losing a loved one, but it feels like kind of wallowing in a way that isn't necessarily healthy for everyone. Despite that early loss, I found Louise to be such an invigorating and fun character. She's very intelligent, and she's very ahead of her time in certain ways. One thing that I liked about her in particular is her love of art, and she's very talented at art. And I love that she's not just interested in drawing and painting and watercolors, which are more acceptable pursuits for a young woman at that time. I like that she really pushes the boundaries, and she's interested in modeling and sculpting. Her mother, Queen Victoria, isn't necessarily for this. She thinks that's too masculine for her daughter to pursue. But Louise really is interested in this, and she keeps pushing and pushing, and eventually she does win her mother over in certain ways. And I love that Louise kept pursuing this and kept pushing, and was able to ultimately make art and sculpting a part of her life. She loved it, she was good at it, and she didn't let society hold her back from what she could pursue. I was also drawn to Louise's interest in politics and society, and specifically in women's rights. She was rather progressive for her time, especially in contrast to her mother, who was against women's suffrage and was against women being able to learn and become doctors. It's really interesting how old-fashioned and kind of contradictory the Queen seems. She's a woman, and she is a monarch and the most powerful woman in the world. And yet she doesn't see women as capable of voting and learning and being doctors and so many pursuits that women were fighting for at this time. Despite her mother's wishes and orders, Louise does go out on her own, and she does continue learning about these different movements. And although she's not allowed to participate and publicly support these movements, I like that she does continue to put herself into them and think about them and consider how she can support the causes that she cares about without defying her mother too much and too openly. In addition to pushing boundaries with art and with her personal politics, I love that Louise also has a very different trajectory in terms of finding a husband. Unlike her older siblings, particularly her sisters, who have arranged marriages with other royals, Louise kind of goes against protocol and ends up moving away from what is expected of royals at this time. She and her mother start looking at different royals around Europe that would be eligible suitors for her. They have a very short list of only 7 possible men to choose from, but things don't work out, and eventually, after some months of looking through these different men, they come to the agreement that she needs to look at common citizens. Now, this was unheard of at this time. It had been 350 years since a royal had married a common citizen. I think the last time had been in 1515, and this is around 1870, and so it had been quite a while since royal people had broken protocol and married outside of royalty. But ever defying expectations, Louise forges her own path with her mother's support and actually encouraged by her mother, and they start looking at different men, particularly of the nobility classes, who would be eligible that are independently wealthy and are not connected to anyone else and would be willing to marry a princess. This launches into a very long process, and you can feel how Louise is so uncomfortable with this and becomes very exhausted by this. She's constantly meeting eligible bachelors, and she has to kind of, be on form for them and judge them and decide whether she wants to marry them. And she's just not really ready for this. She is in her early 20s at this time, but she just doesn't feel ready, and she's just becoming more and more uncomfortable with this whole process, and she just wants it to be over. She's also losing hope because it seems that none of the men that she meets really meet her expectations or her mother's expectations. There's always something wrong, and maybe it's just that Louise is being too picky. And of course, the whole family is involved, and her brothers and sisters have very strong opinions about this, and not all of them are supportive of her marrying a commoner. But nonetheless, she and the queen have both decided that this is the right path for her. But it is a drawn-out path. Now, I won't tell you how the whole thing plays out. I won't tell you who she chooses, but it is a kind of cute love story, and I really did like how her relationship with the guy she does end up choosing, how it unfolds, and just the kind of connection she and this other guy have. I consider it a spoiler, but of course, if you already know history, then you already know how it goes. But for all of you like me who went into this without knowing who Louise is, this is a cute love story. In many ways, I do think the title, In the Shadow of a Queen, is a very fitting one for this book. It really is about that mother-daughter relationship between Queen Victoria and Princess Louise, and like I said, it's unlike most mother-daughter relationships in that the mother is the queen. She is the most powerful woman in the country and possibly in the world, and Louise has to obey her not only as her daughter but as her royal subject, basically. I did like seeing this dynamic and getting to know their complicated relationship. They do love each other, and you can tell that they really do care for one another and support one another, but they don't always see eye to eye, and Louise is constantly trying to defy her mother in certain ways and trying to really stand on her own and be her own person. Who is Louise beyond who the queen wants her to be? Who is Louise beyond a representative of the queen? I like that Louise really has a mind of her own. She's intelligent, she's creative, she's thoughtful, and she's kind, and while she does get along with her mother and they support each other in a lot of ways, I love that she gets to be her own woman eventually. Louise was a rebel in so many ways. She was the first royal to attend a public school. She was the first royal in over 300 years to marry a common British citizen. And I think she was so interesting in how she cared about politics and she cared about different movements, especially women's rights movements. And I love that she eventually found a path to supporting them in a way that worked for her and didn't defy her mother too openly. I really enjoyed this book. I learned so much, and I thought the characters were so vividly drawn. I liked getting to know so many different facets of Louise's character, and she's definitely someone that I want to learn more about and read more about in the future. So I thought this was a wonderful book, and I give it 4.5 stars. You can find out more about the book and read my review at the link in my description. That includes my full review, including any thoughts I might have forgotten to mention in this video, and it also includes links to learn more about the author and get the book for yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. And to make sure you don't miss any more of my videos, please ring the bell to get all my notifications. I've been pretty absent from YouTube the last few months, but I am back now and I'm hoping to put out about 1 video per week. So thanks for watching this video and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!